So as I'm probably going to say by way of a disclaimer at the beginning of each session, um, you know, each of these aspects is something that people spend years learning to do and deepening in their relationship to and becoming expert in. And we're giving us like an hour and a half per week. And I'm trying to give you a little bit of a framing, conceptual framing in 10 minutes. So have mercy on me and also have mercy on yourselves. It makes sense that we'd be, kind of getting situated, getting our feet on the ground. This is huge territories that we're opening up together. And a lot of what's on offer is simply like a buffet table of directions that you can start to walk in according to your what you're hungry for, really, what in your life of practice would offer the most in terms of what you're looking to achieve and shift into. And so that's very much the case this week. So we're looking at the aspect in the curriculum of the psyche. Now, the psyche is a very interesting aspect. Most people these days associate it with psychology and the kind of scientific study of personality and pathology and the human mind. But the root word of psychology, this word psyche, actually comes from the Greek goddess Psyche, and it's the word for soul. It's the word for soul. And so when we talk about psyche, we have a much larger container than simply the work of psychological healing or healing kind of pathological functions in the psyche. We're really talking about, yes, that, but also the emergence into what we might refer to as soul making or soul work. So it's a huge territory. And in this session, we're going to refine it, confine it to simply looking at internal family systems as one tool. And within internal family systems, we're going to be looking at how can we moment to moment bring an awareness to what in internal family systems they call parts as they arise and pass away, as we're together, as we sit. Now, at Willow, we've used 3 different tools. We've used bioemotive emotional processing, we use focusing, and we use IFS. Again, here we're just going to be focusing on IFS, but if you'd like resources for those other modalities, we're happy to share them. So, what I'm going to do is very briefly lay out the primary pieces of the conceptual framework of internal family systems, and then talk a little bit about how this relates to the energy body work and what we're going to study today, what we're going to practice with today. So, and if you'd like to learn more, we have lots of extra resources, as I'm sure that you saw in the workbook. So the primary distinction that IFS makes, which I think is brilliant and we've found to be extraordinarily helpful in working with the psyche, is that it rejects the model of the mind that most of us have inherited in Western culture. And that's this idea or model of the mind as what's referred to as the mono-mind, this individual, coherent, singular mind or self that often and usually, to check to see if this is true for you, you kind of think of yourself as a singular, individual person with one mind. And, often healing is about like bringing that all into like function or something like that. In internal family systems, on the other hand, they have they start from a many mind model of what the mind is. In other words, the idea of subpersonalities, which often in our culture we think of as a kind of disorder, is the default setting. It's actually how all minds are. You are made up of many, many different subpersonalities with different desires, different motivations, different ways that they see the world. And so when we work to harmonize the psyche, we're working to bring those different subpersonalities into a higher order harmonization, orchestrated by what in internal family systems they call the self, which is, and you may have noticed this if you've been practicing meditation, it's a kind of stance where the parts are arising, the different aspects of your mind are arising, but you're not identified with them. You're seeing them, you're bearing witness to them, you can relate to them and hold them in a kind of loving awareness, but you know that you're not them. You're not blended with them or embedded with them or totally identified with them. And so these two core conceptual components, parts, which we'll be exploring in more detail as the rest of this class goes on, and self, this way of being that can see all the parts as they arise and has almost like an intrinsic quality of presence, spaciousness, connection, confidence. These are the two primary kind of concepts or pieces that I want you to hold as we go into this exploration together. So in terms of relating this to the energy body work, now one of the most, I think, interesting parts of this harmonization model is to see the way that these different aspects impact each other or afford a kind of mutual opening. So you may have noticed that as you did energy body work and attempted to kind of breathe your energy body into a kind of harmony or stillness or presence, that you encountered sort of tensions, maybe in your belly, maybe in your heart, maybe in your head. So one way of working with those tensions is to breathe through them, to treat them as energy and encourage them to relax through letting go. Another way to work with them is actually through parts work, is through internal family systems. Instead of treating them as energy, we see them as little subpersonalities, as little parts of our psyche that actually have messages for us, that actually have things that they're trying to communicate with us. And so we turn to them and we ask them, we say hello. And they often will share things with us. We let them know that we're here with them. And in so doing, they often relax. They let go. And we find it much easier to settle the mind and to return to a state and abide in a state of presence and well-being that's pointed to in the energy body practice. This realization that I could work in this way was a seismic shift in my meditation practice. I know many meditators who have spent years trying to come into samadhi, trying to come into focus, and in doing so, they're actually pushing away parts of themselves. They're trying to pretend they're not there. They're, in a sense, trying to ignore, from an internal family's perspective, family systems perspective, ignore young parts of them that are calling out for attention and love. And instead, they're saying, no, I'm coming back to the breath. No, I'm coming back to the breath. And that can work for a period of time, but my experience is that then you get into situations which maybe trigger those parts, and they come out even more loudly than before, right? And so when we integrate IFS into our meditation practice, we can start to develop a really profoundly stable basis in presence, because we're not ignoring the parts, we're actually listening to them, letting them share their piece, maybe healing them. And then the presence, the harmonization emerges out of that. This is a huge benefit to our meditation practice, and there's a kind of natural and emergent process of healing as this goes on. We enter into deeper and deeper states of well-being and spaciousness in our meditation practice. Parts feel more comfortable to come into consciousness. We spend time with them. We relate to them. We love them. They relax. We have more spaciousness, more presence, and on this kind of feedback loop can occur into deeper and deeper states of well-being, presence, and healing. So we'll be exploring in this session primarily just how to see parts moment to moment. We'll do exercises where you'll sort of notice parts and speak on their behalf. And we'll also do a little bit of inquiring into parts, asking them like what it is that they want to share with you. Now, this is beautiful work in and of itself, but I would invite you to, in particular, notice and really want to do the work to create threads between the different aspects, the different weeks. Notice, and we'll do a guided meditation in just a moment about this, notice that when you open to a part and you listen to what it has to share with you to the point perhaps where it can relax, notice what happens in your energy body. Notice the emergence of more harmony, more calm, more space. This is so important. So you can use energy body practice to discover psychological work to do, and you can do psychological work in order to open and harmonize your energy body. This is people, I know meditators who go decades without realizing this connection. And so I'd strongly encourage you to sort of draw that out in our session today. And the last thing I'll say by way of big picture framing is that you may notice parts as we explore today. You may notice parts that have like a lot of emotional energy wrapped up in them. That's totally normal. If you do, it's a very good idea to kind of take a note of that. You know, maybe have a notebook around you, write that down, track where it is in your body and perhaps the emotions that you sense are carried there. This is what in internal family systems they call a trailhead. And it's a way into deeper psychological work and healing. In particular, you can use, there's a PDF in the resources section of the handbook that will give you like journaling exercises that you can use to unfold your relationship to that part and do some healing work with it. We won't be doing much healing work except any that might happen spontaneously today. We'll more be just sort of mapping and getting a sense of like parts on a more surface level. We won't be kind of like trying to open them up and heal any emotional energy that's stuck. So please do make note if you discover any parts that feel like rich territory for work. You can then do that after this, perhaps in small groups, whatever feels appropriate.